So I'm messing around again with some downtown air war over Hanoi by GMT Games. Played this a long time ago, a couple of years, maybe 3 years ago, so it's all feeling sort of vaguely familiar, but I don't remember the rules in enough detail to just sit down and play it again without quite a lot of fumbling around. But I'm setting up a scenario called Thick as a Brick D7, which is set in August 1967, and just going through the process. I've got all the DRVs, air defences or ground-based defences on the board, and then I've made a note of where they all are, and then I've removed all the ones that are hidden, just leaving the ones that you can see here. I've been working out the American strike aircraft or their aircraft set. This is going to be a US Navy mission, so they're going to be coming on from over there. And and I've just got round to plotting their flight path, which we'll go into in a little bit. But the last game of this I played, the US had a fairly, I wouldn't say easy, well, a fairly straightforward target, let's call it easy, because it wasn't in the middle of all this air defence in here, all this flak, high concentration, medium concentrations of flak. So this is the most dangerous area around Hanoi, and they'd had this target here, I seem to recall, and so the US Air Force flew a mission, and it basically came straight on here, you know, messed around a bit, lined up on the target, turned around and flew back again out this way. And that was, well, they got mugged by some fighters and got some bombers shot down, but overall they came away with a great success and destroyed the target and all the rest of it. But this time round we have a US Navy mission, and the target that they've rolled up for themselves is a little bit more testing. They have got to hit this Yen Vien rail yard in here, and as you can see there's some medium and high flak concentrations in here, some light flak there, some light flak there, some medium there, light there. Obviously they've got to come in quite a distance, and other targets were in Haiphong, so Haiphong is likely to have some defences around it as well. So they haven't got a sneak attack on an outlying target. They are getting pretty close to downtown Hanoi. And so yeah, this is going to be something of a test. I've plotted a flight path for them, which you can see there on this map. Obviously the DRV player would not be aware of the American target and so on, or the flight path, but roughly speaking they're coming on at this arrow here, coming in here, as if I wanted to make it look as if it could potentially be an attack on the Haiphong area. So they're going to slide down here but then turn south down in this direction, line up on the rail yard target on one of these hex rows, turn in, complete their bombing run, and then turn out round this way and back out up there, if it all goes according to plan. So yeah, I'm still in, I'd forgotten, well, not forgotten, but I can't, yeah, I'd forgotten how much work there is in setting the game up. This isn't something that you just sit down and play. This takes a lot of time and thought and to set up, and you really have to be enjoying the setup process. So after a slightly aggravated start where I couldn't remember the rules, I'm now sort of relaxing and pottering around getting the kind of setup done, because this is half the game. And where am I up to? If I go on to my sequence of play here, I've done all this stuff for the DRV, I've done their setup, I've done the US planning phase of selecting the target and plotting the flight path. I'm now into this early warning phase where we're going to roll for the weather, early warning level, and the US player will then give the DRV player raid information. Then I've got to work out what, if any, aircraft the DRV have got flying, if they want to spend victory points to purchase any more, and then we'll start deployment. And then the DRV finally can work out which of its fire cans, surface-to-air missile radars, and anti-aircraft it wants on or activated. So yeah, that's what I've got to do, and I'm in no rush to get this done. This has been on my table. I think I set up the DRV a week ago. Then I left it for a few days to forget what I'd done, and rolled up the target for the US and worked out their aircraft package and their routes. Then now I've come back to it, just to carry on really. And if all I get done today is to reach the point where the US aircraft are starting to enter the board, in other words, we've gone from the prior to the raid section into the during the raid section, well, that will be enough for me. So I'm in no hurry to play this. It could be on the table for quite some time, but yeah, just enjoying it. So I'm just at the start of turn 4 here in downtown air war over Hanoi. You can see some American flights just coming onto the board there over the Gulf of Tonkin. And I've got a feeling, my instinct tells me that this is going to be a fairly rough ride for this American mission. So you can see there's some jamming here from these two flights. A lot of stuff is coming on the board detected because the Vietnamese rolled very, very well on their intel roll. So anything that doesn't come on the deck comes on automatically detected, and these want a bit high altitude to do their jamming, and this combat air patrol, which is coming on at high altitude, is going to be detected. Only these 4 in an Iron Hand mission came on at the deck and then have climbed up to low altitude and have remained undetected so far. But everything else, because the bombers are likely to want to come on, high altitude or medium altitude. I might bring them on the deck and climb them up, but that will be slow. Maybe I should anyway. We'll see. But there are a couple of problems that the Americans have got. Firstly, this standoff jamming isn't going to be very effective because these planes only have it out of their front and rear arcs. So trying to fire it, trying to project it in the right 60-degree arc in the right direction to cover all the threats is going to be very, very difficult. And with the ranges that it has, those planes are likely to have to put themselves at risk to get to a position where the standoff jamming is effective. So that's a problem. Another problem is that there is haze at the deck level, and that is going to help conceal DRV flights, and it is also going to make bombing less accurate for some of the bomb systems that the Americans are using on this mission. But their primary problem is that these 2 flights here, which I think are A4C Skyhawks I think, they are the only real effective anti-surface-to-air missile platforms that this whole US mission has. They've got 4 Shrikes in each flight, so 2 planes, two Shrikes each, 4 in there, 2 planes, 2 Shrikes each, 4 in there, and they have a cluster bomb each as well, which would probably be reasonably effective against soft targets like SAMs and AAA. Other than that, though, the only other thing in this Iron Hand mission are these 2 flights of F4 Phantoms, and they are just armed with very basic bombs. They've got no cluster bombs, no Shrikes, no nothing, just bombs and a gun, I think. And do they even have a gun? I hope they do. But you know, whatever they've got, it ain't great. It's not looking very convincing in terms of shutting down SAM sites. It looks like the planes are going to have to put themselves in more danger than they're causing the enemy to get those bombs, sort of make a bombing run against a SAM site. That doesn't necessarily look like the greatest trade-off in the world. So yeah, 2 flights to carry out all the Iron Hand, all the suppression of enemy air defences, and where they've got to get to and get back out of, there's likely to be a lot of enemy air defences. As you can see here, there's a lot of enemy air defences around. So, you know, just 8 shots could leave them a bit short and a little bit exposed. These American planes are likely to be running the gauntlet of some surface-to-air missile shots, and yeah, I predict it's all going to get a little bit uncomfortable. So the DRV have just flicked on the radars of a couple of SAMs there. You know, I happen to know that they are off the sort of main flight path for the US, but they, you know, they're in the kind of direction the US are heading. They could start trying to get acquisitions now, and the main thing is to, you know, fire something up and see what kind of response it provokes. Because if the Americans make a beeline for it and start trying to blow them up, you know that you start getting an idea of where they're headed for. If they start, you know, turning away, you figure that they're going somewhere else. You don't quite know where they're going, but you figure they're not going to Haiphong if all their flights start turning away from those SAM radar warnings. So yeah, a bit of cat and mouse there from the DRV just to try and get an indication of what the US are planning as we head into turn 4. So downtown, end of turn 5, and more American flights on the board, and the bombing flight's about to come on, and this will be pretty much all the American flights on the board here in 6 turns. Quite a tight sort of arrival schedule, but I wanted to keep the planes grouped together quite heavily. I didn't want things getting spread out on this mission, so I brought them on in pretty quick succession. An Iron Hand or these lame Iron Hand Phantoms with just bombs and no real infrared missiles, whatever they're called, anti-radiation missiles, no Shrikes. They turned in quite aggressively towards Haiphong to see what would happen, because they would have liked to have run a bombing run against these 2 SAMs that had switched on, if they could have got away with it. But as they turned in, the whole of Haiphong lit up like a Christmas tree with radars blinking on. That one hasn't come on yet for some reason. That would be kind of suggesting that it's not going to, but to me at least, unless it's waiting for what it supposes are Iron Hand missions to pass over before it switches on, which would be quite a cunning thing to do. So let's not take it for granted, but they couldn't detect it anyway. They tried, they had a SAM detection roll to try and pick up that SAM site and failed. But yeah, anyway, the whole of the rear area of Haiphong lit up with SAM sites, and now the Americans have got a decision to make. Do they want to tangle with this lot, which isn't even there, and the obvious, anti-aircraft artillery that's marked on here, and potentially others as well? Do they want to tangle with that one? It's not even the target. The target is down here. So, do they want to be messing with this? Can they spare resources? And that's not such an easy question, because the exit route for the American strike force is going to be coming from, if we come down here to the target, it's going to come over Yen Vian, down over Yen Vian a couple of hexes, then turn this way up to roughly here, and then fly out back up that hex line there. So it is going to come past the southern area of this sort of defensive network, which is why the Americans would have liked to have taken these out if possible. But it certainly looks like tangling with them from this direction is going to be very silly. So I think these planes are going to sort of these two flights on the deck down here are going to get veered away from this course of action. They're going to get advised not to engage in Haiphong, and they'll probably head down here, and we'll keep a watching eye on these SAMs, and we may have to allow some SAMs some pot shots at passing planes, unfortunately, but I don't see any profit for the Americans in getting drawn in, sucked into that lot for no good reason. The only other thing is that these flights would actually quite like to get rid of their bombs, so that they're then clean and they can just fly with air-to-air missiles and act as combat air patrol. So the other option is to drop down this way and try and come back round from a different direction. This would be from this would be from the south, this would be from the west. So try and come at them from the west, and maybe have a shot at them without running into all this anti-air over here, and perhaps minimising the options for shots there. So maybe they can get a line in here to drop some bombs in on those without sort of flying into a hornet's nest there. So that's the other thought that I've got, but I don't think I'm going to get sucked into that battle. Terrible start to turn 6 here for the Americans. The random event that was rolled up was an AAA ambush, and the Americans, that means the DRV, the Vietnamese, get to make a small arms fire anti-aircraft attack against any 2 flights on the deck over land hexes. Well, there was only one eligible. This one here isn't quite eligible because this hex doesn't count as a land hex. It's more than 50% water, clearly, but this flight here is over land, and so they could make an AAA attack against this. Now, a small arms fire AAA attack against a unit on the deck is pretty low odds. They needed a 16 on 2d10 to hit, they rolled an 18. Then the damage table's pretty low odds, and they rolled a 19, which is, pretty much, well, it's one off the best they could get, and that was a damage and a cripple result on that flight. The Americans rolled the same target for both of those, and if you apply a damage to a cripple or a cripple to a damage, you get the next effect level, which is shot down. So it was crippled and then shot down, and the Americans have just lost a plane, a Phantom, coming in, just over the coast, just broken over the sea, small arms fire, boom, Phantom's gone down. The other Phantom, F4 Phantom, has had to jettison its bomb as a result of that fire. He's panicked and jettisoned his bombs. So there's one plane left in here. He's jettisoned his bombs. He's now flying cap. His aggression's down to -1. I'm playing with the optional rule where you only determine a flight's aggression the first time they require it for combat or a morale check. So so he's shaken up. No bombs left for doing any Iron Hand stuff, and he's out of there. He's going to pull back out and fly cap. And if anything was about to put these Americans off from tangling with Haiphong, I think that is a bit of an omen, and they're going to turn south. I say south, I mean west. I keep thinking of this as south, and it's not, it's west. South is that way. Anyway, they're going to turn west. So we're coming into turn 9, just at the start of turn 9 here in downtown air war over Hanoi in scenario D7, thick as a brick. I've got a lot of the American strike forces on here. We've got some cap there, some cap over there. This is the iron, what's left of the sort of Iron Hand missions. The two ones diagonally there are the full Iron Hand flights with Shrikes and cluster bombs. These two are just armed with bombs, and then they'll revert to cap. In fact, one of them's jettisoned bombs and is now flying cap. The bombing group here, which came on along the deck to try and stay undetected. You can see how well that worked. 3 flights now detected, only 1 undetected, and they've pulled up to a medium altitude so that they can go a bit quicker. And in here is some jamming who've just done a rapid U-turn away from Haiphong, and they'll be putting down their jamming out of their rear arcs in this turn that's just coming up. No more casualties for the Americans. They've had a few scares. There have been some SAM launches from over here, some of which have been on target, even 2 or 3 of which have been on target, but the SAM system in this game, these SA-2 surface-to-air missile systems, really aren't very effective at all. They create more smoke and noise than they do danger to the enemy aircraft. And you know, I don't know the technical reasons for that. Obviously, I trust the designer to have done a lot of work to make these systems roughly as effective as they were, and you're much more likely to have an effect with, you know, anti-aircraft artillery in this game than you are with these. But essentially, when you make a SAM attack, you've got to roll on this table. You've got to be rolling 14 or more on 2 dice, which itself is not the easiest thing in the world, especially when you've got, you know, minuses for everything apart from salvo fire. Even if you get that 14 or more, the enemy aircraft gets a sort of roll to negate the sort of homing mechanisms on the missiles. And given that all the American aircraft have defensive jamming, they only need an 8 or more. 8 or more means that they have to take avoidance. 10 or more means that your missiles just have no effect. So unless they get 7 or less on 2 dice, you're having no effect even after you've rolled a 14. And then after all that lot, you have to roll on a damage table down here. And if you've only got partial acquisition, you can see on a 1 or 2, even then you have no effect. So all in all, this adds up to a big opportunity to miss, a huge opportunity for any effect to be negated anyway, and then some opportunity for all your efforts to be in vain. All in all, surface-to-air missile fire in this game in 1967 is pretty rudimentary. So the Americans have not had any scares. We've had some ambush AAA rolls on the random events table, but they haven't yielded any results. And so the Americans at the moment have got what's looking like a clearer run from here, Namding, down in this direction across Hanoi. So we're in a kind of quiet moment right now where the DRV are not willing to show their hand as to what defences they have in place around Hanoi, and they're keeping all their aircraft and dummy flights well out of the way of this American air, knowing that there's going to be, you know, lots of phantoms in here that they really don't want to tangle with. So yeah, we're in a kind of lull at the moment until something starts to happen around Hanoi.